You're listening to The Black Hour, where the normal ends and the nightmare begins. Realistic horror stories. Unfiltered fear. New episodes drop every week, 3 chilling tales to haunt your nights. So turn off the lights, put on your headphones, and ask yourself, are you really alone? Let's begin. Story: The Forgotten Bunker. The cold wind howled through the dense pine forest of Pennsylvania, the branches swaying like ghostly arms reaching out in the dark. Sergeant James Carter and his squad were on edge. The year was 1943, and the war had dragged many young men far from home. But this mission was different, classified, off the records, and wrapped in silence. They had been sent to investigate strange radio signals picked up by Allied intelligence. Rumors spoke of a secret bunker deep within the forest, abandoned since the early days of the war. No one had ever returned with proof it existed. James checked his compass under the dim light of his flashlight. The forest was thick, and the air heavy with dampness and decay. Something was wrong. The usual sounds of the forest, birds, animals, were missing. All that remained was a heavy silence, broken only by the crunch of boots on the fallen leaves. "Keep moving," James whispered. "Stay alert." The men pressed forward, their rifles ready. Private Lewis, the youngest of the group, kept glancing nervously at the shadows between the trees. Suddenly, a distant metallic clang echoed, sharp and unnatural. "What the hell was that?" Lewis whispered, voice trembling. Sergeant Carter shook his head. "Could be the wind. Keep your heads." They continued, but the sense of unease grew with every step. As they walked, they stumbled upon signs of something unusual, strange symbols carved into the bark of several trees, faint traces of a path that wasn't on their maps. Hours later, just as dusk began to fall, the squad spotted the bunker's entrance. A rusted metal door set into a hill, half covered by vines and earth. The silence was suffocating. The men exchanged glances, knowing this was only the beginning. James reached out and pushed the door open, the hinges creaking with age. Inside, darkness swallowed them, the stale air thick with dust and something else, an indistinct, rotten smell that made their stomachs churn. The flashlight beams pierced the blackness, revealing narrow corridors lined with peeling paint, broken equipment, and old war posters hanging tattered on the walls. Faint whispers seemed to echo through the bunker, but the men couldn't tell if it was their imagination or something more. Suddenly, a loud bang sounded behind them, the door slammed shut. The squad froze. James rushed back, but the door wouldn't budge. They were trapped. The air inside the bunker was thick and stale, making every breath feel heavy and forced. Sergeant James Carter's flashlight beam cut through the darkness, revealing peeling walls, rusted pipes, and the eerie silence that seemed to press against them from every side. The squad moved cautiously, boots echoing on cracked concrete floors. Private Lewis kept glancing nervously into the shadows, every creak and drip setting his nerves on edge. "Stay sharp," James whispered. "This place isn't just abandoned, it's waiting." Corporal Ramirez, the squad's second in command, pointed to a narrow corridor leading deeper underground. "The radio signals came from down there. We need to find out what's still active." As they moved down the hallway, strange symbols scratched into the walls caught their attention, spirals and runes none of them recognized. James stopped to examine one, the metal of his rifle cold in his hands. "This looks like some kind of warning," he said quietly. Suddenly, the faint crackle of static hissed from a broken speaker mounted on the wall. Then, a voice, distorted and low, whispered words none could understand. Private Lewis jumped, gripping his rifle tighter. "Did you hear that?" "Focus," James ordered, but even his voice trembled slightly. The corridor seemed to stretch endlessly, twisting and turning in impossible ways. The bunker's architecture defied logic, making them feel as if they were caught in a labyrinth designed to trap and confuse. As they pressed forward, the temperature dropped sharply. their breath fogged in the beam of their flashlights. Corporal Ramirez stopped abruptly. "Listen." From somewhere deeper came a low, rhythmic pounding, like the beat of a heart echoing through the walls. It grew louder, resonating in their chests, making their ears ring. The pounding was joined by faint whispers, indistinct but filled with sorrow and anger. Shadows flickered at the edges of their vision, shapes forming and dissolving faster than the eye could track. James felt a sudden, crushing weight on his chest, as if the bunker itself was pressing down to suffocate him. "Keep moving," he commanded, though his voice was barely steady. They reached a heavy metal door, warped and rusted, yet slightly ajar. A foul smell seeped through the crack. James pushed the door open, revealing a small chamber cluttered with old medical equipment, blood-stained floors, and a broken journal lying open on a table. He bent down and read aloud, voice echoing in the stillness. Subject 47, exhibits heightened senses and aggression. Psychological instability increasing. Whispers from the shadows are constant. Experiment must continue. A sudden gust blew out their flashlights, plunging them into darkness. A cold voice whispered from the blackness, "You should not be here." The squad scrambled to reignite their lights, but the shadows were closing in. The sudden darkness swallowed them whole, panic rising like a tide. James fumbled for his lighter, fingers trembling as the cold air bit into his skin. One by one, the other men struggled to relight their flashlights and matches, but the shadows seemed to resist their light, twisting and writhing at the edges. Then came the whispering, soft, almost inaudible at first, then swelling into a chorus of voices speaking in a language none could understand. The walls themselves seemed alive, pulsing with an otherworldly energy that made their skin crawl. Private Lewis gasped as a spectral figure materialized before them, a soldier, ghostly pale with hollow eyes, his mouth opening in a silent scream. The apparition reached out a translucent hand, fingers clawing at the air. "Move!" James shouted, pulling Lewis back. They stumbled through the corridor, the bunker shifting and warping around them like a nightmare. Doors appeared where none had been moments before, hallways twisted impossibly, and shadows seemed to crawl along the walls. Suddenly, a distant scream echoed, high-pitched and filled with terror. Ramirez clutched his head, groaning. "It's in my head, the voices, the pain." James gritted his teeth, trying to keep control. "Stay together. We find a way out." They came upon a rusted staircase leading deeper underground. Reluctantly, they descended into the darkness, each step echoing like a death knell. At the bottom, a large chamber opened before them, filled with strange machinery and tanks filled with cloudy liquid. Inside, twisted forms floated, human shapes distorted and broken. James shuddered. What hell is this place? On a console, a flickering screen showed brief images, experiments, injections, soldiers in agony. The truth hit James like a hammer. This bunker was a site for horrific wartime experiments, playing God with human lives. Suddenly, the machinery powered up, lights flashing and alarms blaring. The chamber trembled, and the spectral soldiers appeared again, blocking their path. "No escape," a voice whispered from the shadows. The squad prepared for a fight, but bullets passed through the ghosts harmlessly. Trapped, hunted, and haunted by the sins of war, James and his men faced a nightmare with no end. The bunker's cold metal walls seemed to breathe around them, the hum of ancient machinery filling the vast underground chamber with an eerie pulse. Sergeant James Carter's heart hammered in his chest as he scanned the room, as trying to pierce the shadows where the ghosts lingered. The twisted forms in the tanks floated silently, pale faces pressed against the cloudy liquid like trapped souls begging for release. James felt a chill that wasn't just from the cold. Corporal Ramirez wiped sweat from his brow, though the air was frigid. What kind of sick experiments were they running here? Before James could answer, a low growl reverberated through the chamber, shaking the metal floor beneath their feet. The specters moved closer, eyes burning with an unnatural light, their mournful wails filling the air. Lewis clenched his rifle, voice shaking. They want us to suffer, just like them. James knew they had to find answers, or be consumed by the bunker's darkness. He approached a rusted terminal, the screen flickering to life as his hand brushed a button. Static filled the speakers before a garbled voice came through, broken messages hinting at failed experiments, mind control tests, and a desperate attempt to create super soldiers immune to fear and death. The last transmission ended abruptly with a chilling scream. Ramirez swallowed hard. They were trying to make monsters. A sudden movement caught James's eye, a journal lying on a nearby table, its pages stained and torn. He flipped it open, reading aloud. Day 47, Subject 47 shows signs of transformation. Increased aggression, hallucinations. Whispers from the shadows grow louder. The line between reality and nightmare blurs. Must proceed or lose progress. The bunker's secrets were darker than any of them imagined. Suddenly, the lights flickered and died, plunging them into darkness. The haunting whispers returned, louder and more insistent. James could feel invisible fingers brushing his skin, the weight of unseen eyes watching, waiting. One by one, the men began to see things, memories of war blending with ghostly visions, a past filled with blood and betrayal. Lewis screamed as an apparition of a fallen comrade reached out, accusing and full of pain. "Why did you leave us?" the ghostly voice demanded. James gritted his teeth, struggling to hold his mind together. "We're survivors. We don't abandon our brothers." But the bunker wasn't interested in their answers. It wanted penance. Walls began to close in, corridors twisting impossibly, and the squad realized that escaping this nightmare would require more than courage, it would demand confronting the darkest corners of their souls. The forest outside felt miles away, yet the bunker's grip tightened with every breath they took. Sergeant James Carter and his squad stumbled through the dense underbrush, each man weighed down not just by fatigue but by the horrors etched into their minds. Lewis, pale and trembling, glanced back over his shoulder. "They're still following us. I can feel it." Ramirez shook his head, eyes darting nervously. "Those ghosts, they don't want us alive." James pressed forward, desperate to put distance between them and the nightmare beneath the earth. But the forest was no sanctuary. The shadows stretched unnaturally, shapes forming and dissolving just beyond their vision. Suddenly, a piercing scream shattered the night, freezing the men in place. It was not human, guttural, raw, and filled with pure malice. From the darkness, a figure emerged, tall, gaunt, eyes burning like embers. It moved with unnatural speed, a grotesque blend of man and shadow. James raised his rifle and fired, but the creature vanished into thin air, only to reappear closer, snarling with teeth sharp as razors. The squad scattered, hearts pounding. Lewis tripped, falling hard to the ground. The creature loomed over him, jaws snapping. A flash of light, Ramirez's rifle caught the beast's side. It howled, dissolving into a wisp of smoke that drifted into the trees. James helped Lewis up. "We have to keep moving. That thing's not done with us." As dawn broke, the squad found themselves back at the bunker's entrance, or what should have been the entrance. The hillside was gone, replaced by a solid wall of earth. "We're trapped," James whispered, dread sinking in. The bunker wasn't just a place. It was a living nightmare, and it had claimed them. The oppressive silence around the bunker's sealed entrance was suffocating. Sergeant James Carter scanned the dense forest once more, heart pounding with dread. The walls of earth that replaced the doorway were an unyielding barrier, a tomb sealing their fate. "Listen up," James commanded, voice low but firm despite the creeping fear. "We need to find another way out, underground or overground. No matter what, we get out of here." The squad moved cautiously along the hillside, searching for any sign of another exit. The forest, once alive with subtle sounds, was unnervingly still. Branches snapped underfoot, but there was no response, no animals, no birds, no wind. Lewis stumbled and caught himself on a tree trunk, breathing heavily. Feels like the forest itself is watching us, waiting. Ramirez nodded grimly. This place isn't natural. Whatever's down there is spreading. As they circled the hill, faint footprints appeared in the mud. Footprints too large and irregular to be human. James bent down, tracing the outline. The prints seemed to glow faintly, pulsing with an eerie light. A chill ran down his spine. Suddenly, from the darkness between the trees, a low growl erupted. The squad froze as glowing eyes appeared, more than one, dozens, surrounding them in the shadows. From the forest's depths emerged twisted creatures, malformed, half-human, their bodies marred with scars and unnatural features, remnants of the experiments hinted at in the bunker. The creatures snarled, circling the squad like wolves hunting prey. "Hold your ground," James shouted, raising his rifle. Bullets tore through the air, some hitting the creatures, but many seemed unaffected. The creatures lunged, forcing the squad into a desperate retreat. Lewis was caught off guard, dragged down by one of the beasts. His screams echoed through the trees as James fired wildly, finally forcing the creature to release him. Panting and bleeding, Lewis scrambled back to the group. "We can't keep running," Ramirez gasped. "We have to fight, or we die here." James nodded, determination hardening in his eyes. "Then we make our stand. Right here. No more running." As dawn's first light pierced the treetops, the squad prepared for the battle that would decide their fate, trapped between a haunted past and a monstrous present. The forest air grew thick with tension as Sergeant James Carter and the remnants of his squad steeled themselves for the battle ahead. The twisted creatures that had emerged from the shadows were relentless, their snarls echoing like the growl of 1,000 lost souls. James glanced at Ramirez, whose face was pale but resolute. "We hold the line. No matter what." The men formed a tight circle, rifles raised, eyes scanning the darkness. Every sound, the snap of a twig, the rustle of leaves, set their nerves on edge. Suddenly, the creatures attacked. Feral and fast, they surged forward with terrifying speed. Bullets tore through flesh, but for every creature that fell, 2 more took its place. The air filled with screams, human and beast alike. Lewis fought with desperate fury, his rifle shaking as he fired at a creature lunging at him. A claw tore across his shoulder, burning with unnatural cold. James saw Ramirez falter as a beast knocked him to the ground. With a roar, James charged, driving his bayonet into the creature's chest. It dissolved into shadow and smoke. The battle raged on, time stretching and warping as survival became the only goal. In the chaos, James caught sight of a glowing fissure in the ground, a jagged crack pulsating with a dark light. Drawn by instinct, he realized this was the source of the nightmare, some ancient evil unleashed beneath the bunker. He shouted to the others, "We have to destroy it. That fissure's the heart of this horror." The squad fought their way toward the fissure, pushing past the swarm of creatures. Lewis, bleeding but determined, covered their retreat. Reaching the crack, James scanned the area for anything to use as a weapon. Ramirez spotted a fallen beam coated in rusted nails. Together, they jammed the beam into the fissure. The ground trembled violently, a low growl rising from the depths as shadows writhed and screamed. Light exploded from the fissure, blinding and pure. When the light faded, the creatures were gone. The forest was silent once again. Exhausted and battered, the men collapsed among the trees. The bunker's grip was broken, but scars would remain, in the land, and in their souls. James looked to the dawn breaking over the horizon and whispered, "We survived, but at what cost?"